Hey, what's really going on? Bitcoin, cryptocurrency. Today, going to be taking a look at XLM, Stellar Lumen. Going to be assessing some of these key technical aspects of price action moving forward. Going to be taking a look at some of these pivotal areas of support and resistance I believe we're going to be interacting with in the very near future here. Are you bullish? Are you bearish on XLM? Let me know in the comments down below. Do you trade? Do you hold? Or do you let the price action unfold? Are you diamond hands during all this crazy sideways accumulating in these lows? Looking for the all-time highs again? Perhaps like, the multi-dollar to $10 XLM is in our near future, or are we, bearish enough to kind of fall through our kind of nearest support here and interact with kind of lower levels that we saw in the not so far past? Let me know in the comments down below your strat moving forward. What are you doing with your XLM if you have some? Now, jumping right into it to kind of recap price action, this kind of like ridiculous vertical after accumulation kind of in like October, November of last year. We have this these vertical spikes followed by tens of days of like bearish consolidation downward toward kind of like key levels before seeing some more vertical spikes. The vertical spikeage kind of came to an end upon this kind of like third, parabolic run over the course of a couple weeks. We interacted with kind of like like swing high resistance around like 60 cents. We got rejected, sent down to kind of like the 48-cent level before failing to hold and falling through all the way to this 38-cent level, which was resistance that we interacted with at the kind of end of January and the beginning of January of this year. We traded along support found around 38 cents for like a good like month, I believe. We traded along that level before we kind of like broke just over a month before we were able to see 48 cents again and set some higher highs around 67, 68 cents relative to that 60-cent kind of like swing high there back in the middle of February. We then were kind of like, we got rejected off of that kind of like swing high there, came all the way back through all that support, all that resistance that we broke through. We fell through all of it. Now back to that 38-cent level, wicking down to like, 35 cents, but staying well above 38 cents to rally us back up to those highs that we just came from, to interact with some higher highs around 70 cents, almost 80 cents, before getting abruptly rejected downward yet again. And we fell through all that beautiful support that we had. And so now I do suspect price action based on these kind of really aggressive wicks down to the kind of like a mid 20-cent level there. We could very well have some prolonged kind of bearish consolidation and some perhaps wicks down to those levels as we print some higher lows relative to these kind of like swing highs, kind of like around 44 cents. I believe local resistance is going to be 48 cents in my opinion. And so once we can interact with 38 cents more, I believe that we can finally interact with 48. Although, like I said, we could have some price action below 38, ultimately interacting with like the low 30s to high 20-cent range. Now, before we kind of make our way up there, but like a more short-term bullish support line is going to be that 38 cents that we held kind of like for like over a month in like February and March. When we consider EngineeringRobo along with the Fibba Zucchini, Fibba Illuminati, Fibugatti, Fibba playing Yahtzee, the card game, we can see a new perspective come into play here. When we consider that 0.5 line being a key kind of like pivotal point that we are going to be interacting with at the very instant, price action closing above that line is going to be very, very short-term bullish in my opinion, and we could very well interact with 48 cents in the coming week. Perhaps that 0.618 line at 50 cents. That's going to be like a psychological level that we're going to see resistance off of, I do believe. Although in my opinion, I believe we're bearish enough to kind of get rejected, kind of off of where we are toward that 38 cent, perhaps toward that 200 daily moving average, just below it at like 36 cents currently. The 0.382 line at 32 cents is not an impossible target. We could very well see some price action toward that line and along that level before interacting with like 50 cents kind of again. Super sell, sell 2, sell 3, hell, sell 4, all coming into play at the moment, suggesting some some midterm bearish price action against USDT. And so I mean, with price action above the 200 daily moving average, we can still be bullish long term in my opinion. Even though we could start closing below it, I do believe the fundamentals are bullish enough to bring us back above it. Although from this point, we are still currently above the 200 daily, and so price action, like I said, above that level is still long-term bullish in my opinion. Although we could have some perhaps mid to, some short to mid-term bearish, consolidation. When we consider XLM against the price of Bitcoin, we can see a new perspective come into play when we consider that kind of significant resistance above kind of like 1208 and under 1292 Satoshi. That was going to be a kind of key zone that we're going to have to fight our way through before getting to that kind of like swing high area around resistance 1564 Satoshi. It's going to be kind of like a key point we're going to interact with before we can kind of like, see some kind of crazy higher levels there. That was a significant rejection point to bring us down through that kind of like slapping zone all the way to these kind of like lower ranges here. I do believe local, like a more kind of like bearish target is going to be that 753 Satoshi level. I don't suspect price action to make its way to it, but that does seem like perhaps an aggressive kind of like wick could bring us down to that level. These Fibonacci lines that will show up will be more useful for these kind of like local pivot points I believe we're going to be interacting with here. Although price action is still in this kind of like phase of accumulation, and we're still coming out of this very hard rejection off of 1562. So when we consider EngineeringRobo along with the Fibonacci Illuminati lines, we can see new perspective come into play when we consider this sell for and hell against the price of Bitcoin. Price action correlating with these 0.5 and 0.618. The 0.618 line at 1136 Satoshi, just above kind of where we are currently, I believe, is going to be bearish. It's going to be significant enough to reject us down toward that 0.5 line at 988 Satoshi. I suspect that to be the likely level we're going to see in the coming future here. Resistance, like I said, is going to be at that 1206 to like 1288 zone, just below that 0.786 line at 1347 Satoshi. And that's going to be our kind of like last level before we can kind of like blast up to those swing highs around 1563. Although, like I said, with the sell for and hell present, we do have a lot of sell pressure and some bearish suggestions at the moment. But with price action above the 200 daily moving average, we could be long-term bullish against the price of Bitcoin. And so there's going to be some very volatile price action moving forward, as there's heavy fear, uncertainty, and doubt in the market. There's lots going on as we're still playing out with this kind of rejection. Bitcoin is in a very kind of key state at the moment. And so from the looks of things, like I said, we could have some very, perhaps prolonged accumulation against the volatility that is Bitcoin at the moment. But as long as we are above that 200 daily moving average against the price of Bitcoin and on the USDT chart, we could suspect that the trend is still bullish long term. When we consider Bitcoin against the USDT, we can see a new perspective come into play when we consider the Fibonacci Lamborghini lines are giving us that kind of key zone, like I was suggesting, the 34,000 at 0.5 and 41,000 at 0.618 is going to be that key range I believe we're going to be consolidating in. And so we are accumulating in a more bearish manner toward that 34K level. I suspect, perhaps a break downward toward it. If we don't break upward, that 0.5 line is kind of our likely target. If we fail to hold, significant support is going to be around 32K. As we have some wicks past that to the 30K level kind of there. I do believe price action, it's not impossible to see 32K before we see 0.618 at 41K. Price action below that 200 daily moving average is going to be a rather bearish technical indicator, as many traders are going to see that as a more long-term bearish technical indicator, like I said. But I believe the fundamentals of Bitcoin are going to be bullish enough to fight against these the sell pressure present below that 200 daily. I believe many rejections are going to come off of that 0.618 line. 41,000 is going to be a very significant level I believe we're going to have to blast our way through before we interact with 47K again and see perhaps the all-time highs. We could still perhaps consider the 100K Bitcoin by the end of this year. Although price action is in a very volatile state at the moment, as we are coming out of a roughly 50% correction from 60K to 30K, if you will, in kind of a very short amount of time. And so those that were accumulating between this very volatile range of 57 to 45 kind of K there, and perhaps all-time highs, are perhaps in a more panic state, as price action is quite short-term bearish at the moment from what was a very vertical and very bullish past year that crypto has had. So a multi-100% run could, for a multi-100% run, a 50% correction, I believe, is quite bullish long term, especially to the levels that we are coming back to. Price action, between these zones, I believe, like I said, is going to be very bullish for us long term, and it's going to be some perfect time to be accumulating Bitcoin. And there's never a bad time to buy Bitcoin. There's only better times. And so if you'd only know it's a good time to buy Bitcoin now if we start ascending vertically tomorrow. But in the long term, I believe accumulation along these levels is going to be a pretty good idea. Let me know in the comments down below. Are you bullish? Are you bearish? Do you trade? Do you hold Bitcoin XLM? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Do you think price action is likely to recover? Are we going to see all-time highs again? You think where this is the bottom? Are we about to bounce and recover vertically to all-time highs and then some? Or are we heading back to 20K, the teens? Are we coming back to where we came from not too long ago? Thank you for tuning in. Try Engineering Robo free with the link in the description. Check out all the social media down below. Subscribe here on YouTube. Thank you for tuning in, and tune in for the next one.